In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the win against Genoa. We'll be previewing the matches against Parma and Atalanta. We'll be analysing Inter Scudetto chances together with Serie A commentator Andrew Pickering, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nerazzurri, wishing all Interisti welcome. I'm sure you're all walking on clouds right now after the fifth Serie A win on the trot for the Nerazzurri. But before we get into all of that, let me welcome my panelists, starting with SempreInter.com's own preview writer, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Hello. Very nice to be here, everyone.
It's good to have you. And we're also joined by SempreInter.com's chief news editor, Mr. William Beckman. God, it's difficult to talk sometimes.
You're lost for words, like us all, Nima. I've just looked down at my computer and it says 1st of March, and it just reminded me that we've officially ended winter now. Although I suppose some people say it's the 22nd of March, but let's go with the 1st of March. Well, obviously, that means that we are now past the window for the winter of discontent. We've avoided it for a year, and we can move on. That threat has been on the list of Scudetto obstacles. We can cross that one off.
We'll get into all of that. We're also joined by our good friend from a frozen Texas, apparently. In Houston, if I'm not mistaken.
Dallas.
But
I always we all got it. So let's hope that Will's prediction of the winter of discontent being over continues to ring true, because losing power for 3 days is enough for 1 year for me.
Yeah, and when you live in Texas, I think one of the reasons you move, or you decide to live in Texas, is to always have perpetual sunshine, not the Arctic winter that I've seen you guys have.
We did a little bit of everything, as my wife, who is a California girl, will tell you, because we left much better weather. But that said, we don't get this stuff. This is what you get in Sweden, Nima. Yeah. You guys are prepared for it. We were not prepared at all.
No, you weren't, and I saw that, and it really looked worse in where you were in Dallas than it did in. Well, it's not been that bad here in Gothenburg. Like, it was crazy.
So, have you considered packing up your bags and flying to Mexico, Mike? I hear that's a done thing.
If our esteemed senator thinks it's a good idea, that leader of men decides that that's the best course of action. Who am I? Who am I to question Ted Cruz's brilliance?
Ted Cruz. Right, let's not linger on that. Let's talk about much more interesting people and things by introducing our good friend. He's a Serie A commentator. He has just recently moved to the most beautiful part of Italy, if you ask me, or one of the most beautiful parts of Italy, where it's perpetual sunshine, in Sardinia. Welcome back, Mr. Andrew Pickering.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Yep, from sunny Cagliari, although it was overcast today. It's normally sunny. I hate to rub it in the face of our friend from frozen Dallas, but it's certainly not frozen here.
No,
keep the guest room open for me, Andrew. That's all I ask.
Right, let's get into it, Andrew. You and I have been talking a little bit about this. About Inter and exchanging messages on Twitter and WhatsApp and stuff, and I'm keen to hear. This is the first time we've had you on this season, and I'm really keen to hear how you view this. Are Inter now the favorites to win the Scudetto? Are you team Mr. Positivity, aka Mo Nassar, or are you a little bit more apprehensive to saying that it's a done deal, like Mr. Negativity, apparently, Nerazzurri? Where are you on that scale?
I am going to be incredibly boring and say somewhere in the middle. There's no doubt Inter are favourites. I mean, they're 4 points clear at the top of the table. I think they have the most cohesive squad. I think they've stumbled on the golden ticket. Maybe stumbled is a bit harsh. But they've found the team that works, I think, and they're looking very, very strong going into the final third of the season. there's no way you can say it's done and dusted, because 4 points can disappear in the blink of an eye. You only need a slight wobble, and suddenly, at least Milan behind you are one win away from overtaking you. So it's certainly not done and dusted, but just the way Inter's season has been going, it really feels as though it's in a crescendo. It's just been getting better and better and better. I know there's been a few downs as well not so long ago. It's strange in that sense that I was looking back at a quote from Antonio Conte less than a month ago when he was talking about the project being frozen or stopped in August. To think that was less than a month ago, I think, after the exit from the Coppa Italia against Juventus. It does seem a strange season from Inter, but to me it just seems to be getting better and better. They're definitely favourites. Do I think they'll do it? Yes, I do.
I'll hand you over to Mo. Mo, did you have a question for Andrew?
Yeah, hi Andrew. Great to have you on. So I have a question for you, and I'm going to frame it in contextually. Seeing that Roma have been perennial losers or underperformers against other top teams, and that Inter seemed to have picked up a habit over the years of blowing leads, which result over this weekend do you think is more impressive? Milan managing to win away at Olimpico, or Inter managing to beat Genoa, despite it being a traditional Inter trap game? And do you think the either result bears any value towards a further prediction of what the season might end like?
I think the most impressive of the results has to be Milan, I think, because I was strongly thinking that Roma would win that. I thought Milan were just on not so much a downward trajectory, but really maybe just reverting. I think they've been overperforming slightly in the first half of the season, and maybe they were just reverting back and getting the sort of results that maybe their play warrants, which might be a defeat against Roma. But to turn that round into a win, and in an impressive style, I think, and also the performance as well, because I mean, you can win by not playing well sometimes and pick up the odd win here and there, but they deserve the win, and they outplayed Roma for me, and I think that has to be a more impressive result than Inter's win over Genoa. I think the win over Genoa, I think it massively helped that they had one eye on the derby in midweek. The changes that they made, I think, really played into Inter's hands. And it could have been 6-0. Really, it was a completely one-sided affair. I can understand from Inter's fans' point of view why that feels like maybe a bigger result than it is, because it would be very Inter if they demolished Milan in the derby and then lost 1-0 to Genoa thanks to a 30-yard rifle from a young midfielder.
Or Goran Pandev.
Yes, most definitely.
A 90th minute Pandev winner,
as he does a kukiayo over the goalkeeper, but it's I think that was a reassuring result for Inter, whereas I think Milan's result against Roma was really not quite a marker in the sand, but it was something that maybe could stop the rot, so to speak, in Milan, which might be a slight exaggeration, but it could be something that turns into a mini revival from them.
For sure. Will, did you have a question for Andrew?
Yes. Hi, Andrew. Not jealous at all of the temperatures you're getting down there in Sardinia. But leaving that to one side, one of the things that has been surprising me over the last 3 games, certainly, I don't know if I saw this before then, is just the really nice, watchable quality of the football that Inter are playing. There were some moves in that Genoa game on Sunday that were something that you wouldn't necessarily expect from. I'm going to say you wouldn't necessarily expect from a team coached by Antonio Conte. I don't know if that's fair, but I've certainly never admired the aesthetic quality of his teams before, and I do support Chelsea, who he won the league with a few years ago. But some of the moves were incredible, and so much so that I saw he's now taken to publishing clips of Inter's moves on Instagram and asking fans to tell him whether it's tiki-taka or direct football, which is quite entertaining. But leaving that aside, I saw a column in one of the newspapers today that said that Inter are potentially playing the best football that the league has seen all season, not just the best football of their own season, but the highest quality of play that we've seen all season. And so I just wanted to ask, do you think that's fair? Because that's been the accolade that Milan have had throughout the season. And, do you think it matters? Do you think that makes it more likely that we'll hang on to this lead at the top of the table because everything looks like it's functioning like a Swiss watch? Or do you think that this is just a nice little added bonus and that I may be overplaying it because I love Christian Eriksen so much?
I don't think it's wrong to say it's the best football over the last 3 games that, probably Serie A has seen this season. The stuff they played against Milan was, just ruthless and crisp. And you can see them opening up teams at will. And like I said, against Genoa, it could have been a lot more than 3-0. And I don't think it's unfair on Antonio Conte to say that his previous teams have gone more towards being functional than pretty. That they've had football in them because his teams have nearly always had good footballers in them as well. But I don't think it's unfair to say he has previously been more of a functional manager than an idealist in terms of playing a passing game. But I think the football Inter have been playing, it's nice to have it in that way. It could be an added bonus, but it's also coupled with a really tight defence that is functioning just as well, really, as the side that's going forward as well. When you look, I think they've conceded 2 in, 8 games. I think it is. I have it written down somewhere, but they haven't conceded a lot of goals. And when you couple that with a side that is very, very fluent, very effective going forward. I think this is a very, very good period for Inter. The question in terms of whether they can win the league is, will it continue? I do feel as though it is. I'm not entirely sure if that's answered your question or not. I hope it has.
Louise, I'm getting goosebumps listening to Andrew talk about the football we've been playing. Inter been playing.
No, it's been very good. There's no doubt about that. I think a big reason of that is also how he's managed to incorporate Ivan Perisic and Christian Eriksen into this system, approaching, not only I've said it on this pod a couple of times. I think the most impressive thing I've ever seen of Antonio Conte, or in my opinion, when he's at his best, is when his back is against the wall and he has no options to go into the transfer market and bring Gervinho or whatever madness he's obsessed with that week. But when he's got this group of players, this is who you've got, Antonio. This is what you've got to make work. I think that's when he's at his best, and his ability to not, because Christian Eriksen and Ivan Perisic are established stars. They're no teenagers. So to be able to get them to not only buy into the idea and buy into adapting to a new role, but also doing it wholeheartedly and also having the wisdom to adapt the balance of the team to get the best out of them is phenomenal. And that's all him. And this during a pandemic, this during the question mark surrounding who will own the club on a daily basis, on the back of payment, wages not being paid out. That's incredibly difficult. And to me, he is at his best in the most difficult circumstances, when he's forced to give 120% from all angles. And I think that's why this team is playing such good football, is because with the Brozovic, Barella, Eriksen midfield trio, which I've been in love with since the Fiorentina Coppa Italia game, is I think that if teams pressure and mark out Brozovic, then you've got Christian Eriksen to create. And if you go on him, then you've got Brozovic, and then you've got Barella's physique, and Barella can do everything. He's a tuttocampista pretty much. He can cross, he can shoot, he can create, he can do everything. That makes Inter really unpredictable. Just a comment, just to hear your comments on that before I hand you over to Mike.
Yeah, you've actually raised about 3 points that I had written down in my notes already. So I'm beginning to think maybe you've seen my notes and hacked into my Google Drive or something. No, that midfield is, yeah, he has found a way for those three players to work together, because I think they are, to me, they're the best three midfielders at the club. But it doesn't always work that those midfielders work together. But it's very hard to see anything that's lacking in that midfield, because obviously Brozovic can keep possession ticking over. Christian Eriksen can pick a killer pass far easier than a lot of other midfielders in Serie A and probably in Europe as well. And then Nicolo Barella is, I mean, I tweeted during the derby that I just don't know what his game is missing. I can't think of a thing he does badly. I mean, I jokingly said that I don't like his haircut. That's about the biggest, the biggest insult I could give to him.
The lockdown hair he's got going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's about it. Because I mean, I don't know what his heading ability is like. Maybe that's not very good. But I mean, everything that you want from a midfielder, he does, and he's also got that slight edge to him that he will go and kick you if he's getting annoyed, which I think is not bad to have in a midfielder.
For sure. Mike,
he scored a pretty. He did score a pretty decent header for Italy against the Netherlands during the qualifiers for the Euro.
Well, there you go. He's absolutely flawless.
Yeah. The funny thing with that is also how, I mean, he's revealed that his mother wanted him to become a basketball player, like that when he was growing up. Like she thought, he doesn't strike me that he's been the tallest kid in class ever in his life. But apparently that's what, and he loves basketball. Apparently that's his thing. He's a big LeBron James fan, huge NBA fan, which is also kind of funny given that he's not very tall. But if Fabio Cannavaro was fantastic in the air, so why not you, Nico? Go for the dreams, aim for the sky. Mike, did you have a question for Andrew?
I do. Mo actually mentioning the Azzurri is a little bit of what I was going to ask you next. I can't help but look a little bit ahead to the transfer window, only because I think so many Inter fans are expecting a change in goal, or expecting a new keeper to be coming in. And you, as somebody who sees the whole league, I think would have great perspective on this, because more than any time, I think maybe in recent memory, there are a lot of options from mid and lower table sides that Inter could go for to replace Samir Handanovic. If you are, and I've asked this question before to David Amael when he was on, I'll ask a varied version of this to you, because I feel like a lot of the candidates actually are Italian, and I can't remember an Italian goalkeeping pool that's as deep as it is right now. So let me put it to you like this, because this is going to be an Italy question that probably answers some of where I think us Inter fans should keep an eye over the summer. If you are taking the squad to Euro 2021 and you have to pick your number 2 and your number 3 keepers behind Donnarumma, who are you taking? Is it Cragno, Mattia Perin? Are we talking Golini, Silvestri? Salvatore Sirigu is still a thing. Who have been at this glut of Italian keepers? Who are the ones that stand out to you behind Donnarumma?
That's a very, very, very good question. I think I'm taking Cragno. Some of the stops I've seen him make this season, and Cagliari are so bad he has had a lot of stops to make. But
it's the Sardinia bias there.
No, it's the Eusebio Di Francesco. He needed to leave. He should never have been brought in, and immediately they win again.
Yeah. I'm one of those fools that thought maybe he was a good appointment, but I have been proved emphatically wrong on that. Yeah, and admittedly, I am based in Cagliari, and I've now said how great Nicolo Barella and Alessio Cragno are, so there's definitely a bit of bias there. But no, I think Cragno, if Cagliari go down, or even if they stay up by the skin of their teeth, I think Cragno is going to be a goalkeeper at a better club than Cagliari. And could that be someone towards the top of the table? Yeah, I think it could be. But I mean, I would definitely have him in behind Donnarumma, and then for me, it's probably between Golini and Sirigu. I don't think Sirigu's having a fantastic season. I think he started very well. He's maybe having a bit of a wobble at the moment. I would probably take Golini. I think he's always impressed me. I think he's still got things to improve on. Obviously, I'm fairly sure he's still quite young. I'm desperately just Googling to see how young he is to make sure I haven't made a mistake. And he's not 35. No, he's 25, which for a goalkeeper is still quite young. So, I would take those two. Definitely Cranio. I think the third one, there's not too much between maybe the likes of Golini and Sirigu, or maybe even Alex Meret as well. But I would probably take
him. There's so many.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. No, to me, look, when you've got two young goalkeepers in Cranio and Donnarumma, and you've got someone like Gigi Buffon sitting there at Juventus doing what he's doing, accepting that role with the experience he has, there is no one else as a third keeper than Gigi Buffon. You cannot find a better third keeper than Gigi Buffon. It's just for this world, just for the tournament, like, Roberto, call your old mate Gigi. Like, that's it's just call him. I just don't. Given that he's accepted the role of that, and he's done it so well at Juventus, being a backup and not treading on the hierarchy at all, I think he's shown, and the experience he has. I think as a third keeper, who's better? What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, that's a very good call, and one I hadn't even thought about. So, if you're looking, I mean, how often does a third keeper at a tournament really take to the pitch? It's very, 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 very rare, I would say. So if you're talking about someone who can go in there, who has done it before, who has pretty much been to every major championships and every major final of every major competition, pretty much. It's a great call. You've completely outshone my answer there.
No.
Gigi Buffon is the Tommaso Berni of Juventus. I think you can say that now.
Except for less nudity, I guess, and not as much. I don't know
that we know of.
Sorry,
that we know of.
Well, I'm just going off of Tommaso Berni's Instagram and the hippie yoga kumbaya stuff that he puts on with his girlfriend in, I think it was Goa, and they were walking around in sarongs and doing these artsy photos with them naked, holding each other, not showing anything that was, like, you're not supposed to show, but looking intellectually into the horizon. It was just,
it's the archetypal uomo spogliatoio, isn't it? It's exactly what you want, the sort of soothing, therapeutic presence that. Although we're winning the league potentially without him, so I don't know what that says about his.
I think if it proves nothing else, it proves that the best career in the world is third choice goalkeeper. Just money for nothing, pretty much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. Before we let you go, I mean, you've already said that you think Inter are going to win. Who's going to finish second to fourth? Because it's a hornet's nest.
I think Juventus are going to have some sort of revival, and probably finish second, and then I'll go for another Atalanta third and Milan fourth.
Ooh.
Although I was a lot surer of that before Milan beat Roma, but I'll stick to it just because I'm stubborn more than anything else.
Well, before we let you go, do you? I mean, is there anything you have coming up that you want to plug? Your social media, whatever. The floor is yours.
Good question. Do I have anything coming up? That probably means no if I haven't. Can't think of straight away. But no, I've got a couple of commentaries coming up. Although a few weeks away now for match week 28. I've got Spezia Cagliari, the latest instalment in the relegation drama that is Cagliari, and also Hellas Verona and Atalanta. But quite honestly, other than that, I think most of my other work is behind the scenes, so nothing I can really plug.
Well, we'll be sure to check out the commentary. Always enjoy listening to you, and also banter with you on social media.
That will be going on.
Yes, that will be going on. I hope that never changes. Thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. What's your handle on Twitter? What's your handle on Twitter if people want to get in touch with you?
It is Maglianera 86, which is not the easiest. It's Maglianera 86.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you.
No problem at all, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to chat a bit of footy, and have a good evening.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right. Let's talk a little bit about the Genoa game. To me, everyone watching that game, even Genoa's social media manager was impressed by how Inter completely dominated Genoa at one point when they tweeted out almost admiration of how Genoa were being outplayed by Inter, as in Genoa's Twitter the guy whoever runs that. It was kind of bizarre to see. I don't think I've ever seen a club's Twitter handle comment that like that. So complimentary about the team that's literally beating them as they were. But I mean, if we leave that little sideshow aside, it was very interesting to see that I noted one thing, and that's 60 goals Inter have scored. And we're frustrated, and we're right to be frustrated that Inter don't score more, given how many chances they miss. They are by far the team that have scored the most in the Serie A, and they're setting records for Inter in the Serie A by scoring this much. I'm having trouble I've thought about this, and I don't think it's us being fans and demanding more of Inter, but because I think that given the amount of chances, we should have at least have 10, 15 more goals in the Serie A. But part of me is like, well, if you can miss this many chances and score 60 goals still, that's also a huge sign of strength. What do you make of this, Mo?
Yeah, look, I agree in the sense that it's very frustrating. All these chances that weren't taken, but they were much more frustrating in the earlier part of the season when the results weren't coming. I think at this point where we're at, the most important thing is the 3 points. If we're able to get the 3 points in any way, that's great. If we're able to get the 3 points while playing well, that's fantastic. If we're able to get the 3 points while creating a ton of chances, that's amazing. So just scoring 4 or 5 or 6 instead of 3 doesn't really matter. On the other hand, I also I'm quite loath to congratulate Inter after a 6 or 7-0 win, like the ones we spoke about this last week, I think, or maybe the week before, the Sassuolo, the Mazzari Sassuolo matches. Wins that are so one-sided, that are so lopsided, tend to sometimes be a bit hollow, in the sense that you're not able to really sustain the same sort of level of performance and result, in particular, week after week. So while I feel bad that the numbers aren't more impressive, as in the sense that the potential is there and they could be, but at the same time, I'm also glad that we're not doing the 6, 7, whatever nil matches and then run out of steam against steady working towards a very impressive mean for that matter. Still by far the highest goal differential. Double the nearest contender in terms of goal differential. The top by far the highest number of goals scored. So I'm not. It doesn't bother me too much. As a matter of fact, scoring more goals might somehow be a bit might not play well for us, I think, counterintuitively.
Mike, I'm keen to hear what you make of not this game itself, because I think it was this Inter were completely steamrolled Genoa, and the only thing that was frustrating was that we had to wait until I think it was 66th minute or 62nd minute where Darmian scored Inter's second, and the fact that all 3 goals were scored by former Manchester United players is also something that that was really, really funny to me. But I'm keen to, based on everything we've seen, since you last were on, and everything we've seen in Inter, I'm keen to hear what your take is. Where do you think this is going?
I think they're going to win the league is where I think it's going. Which
really
last time I was here, that was not a thing that I felt.
No,
so that was
I did not.
You felt, right? I came on last after Udinese, and the amount of growth this team has had in a month and a half is wild. But it's real, genuine growth. And if this team does win the league, then I do think there was going to be a lot of because Inter were the trendy pick before the year, right? So many people thought this was the year they were going to do it. And I think there will be a lot of people who pat themselves on the back and then say, hey, we were right all along, Inter won. And I think that's missing the point, because this team hasn't played this way the whole year. This team, from the start of the year, through late January did not look close to what they are right now. This is genuine growth, and it's growth from Antonio Conte as far as being flexible in his tactics. It is growth from Antonio Conte about stopping being stubborn about Christian Eriksen and realizing that he should play him. It is growth by the players like Eriksen and Perisic to adapt to what Conte needs. But the bottom line is this team over the last month plus, nobody's on their level. They keep playing like this. They stay healthy. It's a different team. There's just, and you guys did a great discussion of that with Andrew. We already talked about that before about why the midfield balance is different. You could watch yesterday's match, and yesterday's match is only going to tell you so much by itself, but what it shows you, where were those chances coming? It wasn't just up the flanks like it had been so often the first half of the year. It was ball after ball in the middle of the pitch, and Genoa couldn't do anything about it. A lot of that is Eriksen, both what he's doing directly and indirectly, but there's so much more tactical flexibility with this team now. I mean, I was always worried, not just about the mentality, but just they're going to be a midfielder short, and they don't have a left back. Well, now they suddenly have a left back, and they are clearly not a midfielder short if Eriksen keeps playing this way. So there's some time for this to all unravel. Sure, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, over the next, the last 5 fixtures means that this team is solved. It's not that way. But to me, it isn't just how they're playing, but you see something like yesterday where I think a lot of Inter fans, and I saw it on Twitter too, right? Until Darmian scores the second goal, I saw some hand-wringing out there about, we know what's going to happen. Genoa's going to equalize, Inter going to blow chances. I didn't feel that way. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel that way because I looked at this team and I looked at their mentality and I looked what's on the pitch and I said, no, they're going to figure this out. And that to me was evident in the Milan match where, even if Handanovic makes those 3 saves, so many other Inter teams wouldn't have gotten the second goal. But not only did Inter get the second goal on a beautiful piece of teamwork, but the third goal comes in and it's Romelu Lukaku pounding his chest with some attitude of, this is my goal. I'm getting that goal. And that's what happened yesterday. Inter weathered the storm. They waited. They were patient. They were calm. 2 more goals come in, wash your hands of it on to the next one. So I do think this team is different. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I have somehow talked myself in this team winning the league. But I look at where they're at. If you're a numbers guy, 538, I believe, had us at a 79% chance to win the league at this point. So the data points to this too. The goal differential is so wide above everybody else. It just feels like it's finally come together. And for so long this year, I resisted it. But now I look at what this team has looked like, and there aren't weaknesses anymore. And if that holds up, I don't know who's going to touch them because they just played 3 of the 5 best teams below them on the table, and they pounded all 3 of them. So what more do you really want to see,
Right, Will. I'm building on Mike's point there. This is something I wanted to basically to ask all of you, but I want to start with you. The upcoming games, and I think this is where it's really important because I saw some people talking about, Inter are going to win the league by 10 points. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think you're going to see that. But I'm still not there where you guys are to say that Inter are going to win the Serie A. I really don't see it like that. I think that there's too many. There's quite a few twists and turns left in this tale before you can say anything definitive. But I do stand by what I said, and that is that if Inter go out after the Atalanta game with a 7-point advantage to whoever is in second place, then yes, I think Inter are absolutely going to win the league. But that's going to be decided over the next week because for me, the Milan beating Roma was not so surprising given how Roma act in big games. What surprised me was how thoroughly Milan defeated Roma and should have scored at least 3-4 goals more, disregarding all the controversy. But for me, the trap game for both of these clubs is now this week, the midweek game, where Milan take on Udinese, who we know can frustrate everyone and anyone, and Inter go to a Parma who have been 2-0 up against Spezia and Udinese and drop that to 2-2. And this is and it's at a stadium where Inter have, historically struggled a little bit. So for me, Milan's game against Udinese and Parma-Inter is more indicative of what happens in the Scudetto than in the Scudetto race for both of these two, more than Inter-Atalanta and Milan's game with Hellas Verona, which is also a very tough game. I'm keen to hear what your thoughts on this. Like, for me, it's like up until the international break, which is when Inter will also play Torino and Sassuolo. That's where we will know where this is. Where are you on this, Will?
Well, I would just reiterate, or maybe clarify what I said last week. And I was talking about how this league is ours to lose. What I meant really by that was not that I'm certain Inter are going to win the league. What I meant was if we don't win it, there's no excuse. That's really what I meant. I'm not absolutely sort of nailed on.
That's where I'm at too, for the record. Yeah. I'm where Will is. I'm not necessarily saying they for sure are winning. I just think it is their league to lose, and I'm struggling to see the way they're playing how they lose it. I'm not Mo level yet, and Mo will be the first person to take the victory lap, deservedly so, if this does happen. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically where I'm at. And look, this is a really big week. Obviously, this is one of the few weeks in the next couple of months or so where we don't have the 3-week advantage with European games because we're all playing in midweek. So that's a leveler as well. I agree that Parma is a really difficult match. You know that obviously after the derby, Conte said that I want to wait for these games against Genoa and Parma before we make any sweeping statements about this team's maturity, because the games against Milan and Lazio, they're games that you're always going to be up for, and that these next 2 games against teams that we should be beating will tell us a lot about our maturity. Now, we've passed the first test, but it's all when you score after 30 seconds, I kind of think, but there's part of me that always thinks great, and there's part of me that kind of thinks when analysing the result, okay, but that's not going to happen very often. So it maybe isn't very indicative for how we're going to cope with matches coming up. So I don't really know how much to draw from Genoa in terms of how we're going to play the Parma game, because the problem or the fear with Genoa was scoring the first goal, but we did that within a minute. So unless we do the same against Parma, then it's going to be quite difficult. In that, maybe that'll be the game that is finally the game where we're not allowed to play on the counter attack. I keep waiting for a team to deny us the counter attack. We keep managing to do it. So maybe that'll be the one. But no, the Atalanta game is harder. Let's be honest. Parma are in the bottom. Parma have won twice all season. Admittedly, they got a point back in October when they did exactly what you just said against Spezia and Udinese. They took a 2-0 lead at San Siro and they threw it away. I remember that last year, this game at the Tardini was the one where we got that fantastic gif of Conte sort of dying in the stands in stoppage time when Lukaku had missed, or Sanchez or Moses or someone had missed had thrown away a counter.
I think it was the Victor fucking hell episode.
It was, yeah. I mean, we were already 2-1 up by that point, but it was a really difficult game. We were losing until 10 minutes to go, and Jovino could have had a hat trick. So this is not a game that I'm taking for granted by any means. It does feel like a big week. I mean, Milan have lost him. They've lost Ibrahimovic. They've lost Çalhanoğlu as well. And Rebic, I think, is going to be back pretty quickly. They said that he's not got a serious problem, but Ibrahimovic is going to be out for another couple of weeks. So if Milan can stay on our coattails through these next 2 or 3 games, then this isn't going to be done anytime soon. I think maybe their win against Roma is a good thing for us, because obviously I'd prefer them to drop points, but if maybe this will ensure that we don't lose our concentration, because there is a very realistic possibility that having been 7 points clear momentarily after the Genoa game, we will go onto that pitch against Parma with a 1-point lead, because Milan played the day before us.
Exactly.
And it'll be the same again with the Verona and Atalanta games at the weekend, because they'll play before us again. So this is a key moment. If we beat Atalanta, then, and we're still I think even if we beat Atalanta and we're 4 points clear, I think that puts us in a really good position. I just don't see at the moment any reason, and I am nervous saying this because I know which team I support, but I just don't see any bad signs at the moment.
I'll tell you which ones. Brozovic, Lukaku getting a yellow card, Brozovic getting sent off, Bastoni and Barella also getting a yellow card. So you turn up to Atalanta without those 4.
Okay,
how do you like that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you wanted to be nitpicky about the Genoa game, for it to have been a perfect afternoon, 1 or 2 of them might have picked up the booking. But we saw what happened with Calabria against Spezia. That doesn't always work. So I'm against that. The yellow cards will tell you what, that is the one thing that is a risk at the moment, is if you have a multiple suspension for any of these games, not just Parma, not just Atalanta, sorry, because if you take out Lukaku and Barella for one match, then we're going to have trouble against anyone potentially. And on that note, it was good that Sanchez scored yesterday, because we're going to need him at some point in the next few weeks. But this is, I don't know if I've really answered your question, but yes, this feels like a very big week because we have our last really tough game for a month or so in Atalanta, and we have a match against a team who took points off us earlier in the season. So yeah, it's a key week. Let's be honest. And if Milan get through this week with 6 points, then this is going to be a really good race because they're clearly that would show that
the wire. Then it's going to the wire. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. If Milan can beat Udinese and Hellas away, who we know can cause anyone troubles,
who dominated Juventus at the weekend.
Yeah, well. and not only that, I mean they have been a problem for Juve and for Inter and for the top teams Hellas for 2 seasons now. They are a good team. They don't concede anything. They're incredibly disciplined. They hurt you. It's one of the few times I've seen Antonio Conte actually adapt to the opponent was against playing the 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-3 against Hellas away, which Inter won. But still, that they are a tricky team, and to do that with Ibra and Çalhanoğlu and Rebic, and we'll see how all of that. I think this is more key than the Roma game, because Fonseca just doesn't understand that he needs to change his approach when playing the best teams in the Serie A, and hence you see the results they have against the top sides. But I mean, let's start with the Parma game. Let's start with predictions and all that. I'll start with you, Mo. Are you seeing another Genoa performance, or are you seeing something a bit more of a trap game here? And what's your prediction?
Well, yeah. Let me start by saying I had just wanted to say what Will had said right before, which is I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that Milan won. I mean, of course, like you said as well, Nima, it'd be great for them to draw points, but I think maintaining that bit of pressure on the team will really alert the senses and make sure that the guys are really up for it, even if it might seem like a straightforward match. The other thing I want to say is when I do the predictions for the website, one striking thing that's been happening more and more often over the past couple of years, especially under the Conte project, is the team sort of does what you expect it to do. And I know we've given Conte a lot of stick for, failing to live up to the non-Pazza Inter and Inter still being Pazza and whatever. But really, if there's one thing that I sort of feel in my gut now is that a lot of times you look at this Inter side and think, I've been so conditioned over the years to expect the worst and this is a trap game. But over the last year and a half or so, Inter have generally, barring some, cup exits and disappointing results in Europe, but in the league have generally done what they should do when you look at the head-to-head between the teams and what their opponents are like on paper, at least. So I think against Parma, it is a difficult team. It is a difficult stadium. There is the D'Aversa factor with Conte, and there is all that. But I think in the end, the better team will win, and the better team is Inter. And you spoke about teams, allowing Inter to counterattack, but also at the same time, Antonio Conte's Inter project in the beginning of last year, was the Inter that would steamroll teams that defended deep as well. So it's not like while Spalletti would have problems with teams that sat back against Inter, and therefore do well against the bigger six, the big six or whatever, the Seven Sisters. Spalletti's teams would generally perform well against stronger opposition. The knock was that Spalletti's Inter would not do well against the provincials. But the Conte project does do well against teams that sit back. Eventually, sooner or later, the onslaught is just too much for defenses to bear. So, it's great that they give Lukaku and Lautaro and now Eriksen and Hakimi and whoever all the space for them to run into. But at the same time, if they do sit back, it's just a matter of time before the team unlocks them. So, barring some unforeseen, ridiculous defensive errors or Samir Handanovic, Hellas Verona-esque brain farts or whatever, I think all in all will be good and we'll come out of this match with all 3 points.
Okay, so give me a prediction.
I'm still, as optimistic as I am, I'm still unable to predict clean sheets, despite them being more of the norm over the last 10 matches or so. So I'll say it's a hard fought 3-1. Where the gameplay does not really reflect the result. It's a tight match, but we'll come out 3-1 winners.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing, but I'm thinking more 2-1. I think it's going to be tighter than that. I think Parma are fighting for their life, and they are literally fighting for their lives because they shouldn't be where they are, and they are because they just can't win games. I don't know how 2-0 wins that 2-0 leads, excuse me, that they've thrown away needlessly, is what we can it's just what we just I just came up with off the top of my head, and it's not just that, and they've been pretty woeful, but I still think that they do have something. I think D'Aversa is also a skilled coach who should have kept him to begin with. They wouldn't be in this mess to begin with. So I think we're going to see something from them, Torino and Cagliari, to really bring some life into this relegation battle. But I still think that Inter have the quality to see them off. I just pray and hope that neither Brozovic, Barella, Bastoni, and Lukaku get a yellow card, because they need to be there against Atalanta for sure. So 2-1 for me. What about you, Will?
I have 2-0. I think maybe the goal's coming quite late. Bastoni scored in this game last year, so maybe he can repeat the feat. On Parma, they are decimated up front. That's one thing that does go in our favour. Cornelius is definitely out. Gervinho might be as well, and we know that Gervinho ripped into us in the reverse fixture, so that might be helpful. But I agree it will be a tight game. Parma, of their last 3 games, they've taken the lead and not won any of them, but they have taken the lead. So they're not a team that's dead and is waiting for relegation despite their position in the table. So this is it's going to be a tight game. I wouldn't rest anyone, despite the obvious risk of getting someone suspended for Atalanta, because we're not clear enough ahead of Milan yet to be making calculations about who we rest and who we don't. So full steam ahead, and let's hope Gervinho is slightly injured in 72 hours time.
Mike?
I'm with Will on 2-0. I mean, for however much Parma has to fight for, and for however much they might have fighting spirit, this is a team that, by my count, has 1 point out of their last 6 home fixtures, if I'm looking at this correctly. So it's not like this fight has translated into anything actionable, especially if Gervinho is out. I'm not terribly intimidated. We talk about a Torino or a Cagliari. I think both of those teams have something special. Andrea Belotti is a fantastic striker who can threaten far more than a bottom table striker normally would. Alessio Cragno, we're all admirers of. We saw what he could do in the reverse fixture. There isn't really anything in Parma on paper that should trouble Inter. Maybe they tighten up. This has traditionally been a bad fixture for Inter, but again, this is, if I'm right, then we shouldn't be looking at this Inter like the old Inter, because I think something is different here. And I do trust that even if Parma do decide to park the bus and don't allow their counterattack, I just think there's enough creation now up the middle of the pitch. We have Hakimi back on the right. There's an actual left-sided threat with Perisic. There's just too many weapons. So I'm going 2-0.
I like that.
This is not Parma Inter from 2014 with Paolo Di Celia scoring twice and 2-0. Those days are gone. Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean,
by the way, Parma they scored. You mentioned that 2-2 draw against Udinese in their last home game. Before that, they went 8 home games without scoring. They hadn't scored since October or something, which is absolutely extraordinary. So they've clearly got issues to score. So
they certainly
and
do.
we've conceded 1 in 7. So
yeah, and that was a deflection. But I think, but let's move on to the Atalanta game. That's a game where I think it suits Inter much better, because Atalanta are, although they're a fantastically skilled team attacking wise, who are one of the best teams in Europe, provedly by as demonstrated by the results. I still think that this is a game that suits Inter, because Atalanta have one way to play, and that they will go after you. And that suits Conte, at least so far, against Lazio, against Milan, against Juve. When he gets to sit down deep and attack the space, he's happy, and his team is happy. But having said that, it's Gasperini, and Gasperini has he is obsessed with raining on Inter's parade, and if he can in any way cause Inter to drop points, he will do that. And also the fact that Inter have done pretty well against Atalanta recently. I think that's something that kind of that to me speaks more for Inter than the Parma game in a sense, which feels much more like a trap game. But I think Inter will win pretty comfortably against Atalanta, because obviously the Champions League against Real Madrid is what they're looking at as well. So no, I'm thinking a 3-1 win against Atalanta. That's where I am on that. What about you, Mike?
I mean, I think the match will be a little tighter than you will. I'm a little nervous just because, as you said, they play one way, but they do that one way very, very well. But that said, I mean, I generally agree. And also I should say that the Madrid match is 8 days away, so they've got time after the Inter match to focus on that. I do think, though, that the back line is weak, and there have been plenty of times where Inter are forced to play off the counter, and they prefer to play off the counter, and they will play off the counter. But this team just has so many more ways that they can play now. This isn't the Atalanta Inter fixtures where we knew Inter were just going to, gift possession and would be technically outclassed in the middle of the pitch. That's not necessarily the case anymore with Christian Eriksen and Marcelo Brozovic and Nicolo Barella. So again, I just keep going back to, I think Mo, over the last several episodes, I love how Mo has broken it down big picture. And what he often comes to, and I think he's right, is just who has the better team, who has the better players, and who has the better manager. And it's just, at this point, I don't know, Atalanta might do their one thing better than Inter could, but Inter can play that style now, and they can play the counter, and they can lock it down, and they can play bully ball, and they can play on the flanks. There's just so many ways now for this team to succeed if in the current form they're in. So I will say 2-1. I think it will be nervy. I don't think Inter will pull away the way that they did against Lazio and against Juve and Milan. But I do think Inter get all 3 points with this being at home.
Okay. What about you, Mo?
Yeah, difficult one for me to predict, and I always like to talk about these. And thanks for the other shout out, Mike, as well. So look, I think the match will also depend on what we do in the previous match, what all teams do in the previous match. Seeing these games are a bit close. I don't know. I just have a draw. I keep thinking it's a draw. Maybe. Let me put me down for a draw. Put me down for a draw.
Yeah, I mean, I think a draw against Atalanta is pretty much. I mean, that could absolutely happen, and it did happen in the reverse fixture. They kind of took each other out, but that was a different Inter. They were a completely different team. I do think that if Antonio Conte is to make a change, it will be against Atalanta, because I do expect him to rotate a little bit.
I was just going to say, I wonder if this is the match where we see. It all depends on suspensions, potential suspensions, and otherwise. But all things being equal, maybe this will be the match where Vidal steps back in.
I think so.
Yeah, to give the midfield a little bit more bite. I don't know. I think it's a very winnable game. I think, like Mike had just said, and Will before, I think, or maybe you did before, but I think Inter should win. It's a very winnable game. But I'm just I'm too nervous to predict in a week. Clearly, what is a very critical week to predict 6 points, and we'll go for the good old 4 points a week prediction for now, just to hedge the bets, and not tempt the fates too much. Just let's not tempt the fates too much. I think it's a winnable game, but I'll predict a cautious 4 points.
Well, what about you, Will? Are you on the 4-point train, or are you on the 6-point train?
Well, if I take this game individually, I agree with what you said about this being theoretically a better game for Inter in terms of a tactical approach, because we'll have the space to play into. But on the other hand, we've won 14 of our last 17 league games since the reverse fixture against Atalanta in November. It's only Sampdoria, Roma, and Udinese who've got any kind of result against us in the league in the last 3 months. And I wonder if this, if we win both of these games, then we're 16 out of 19. Yeah, this is like insane form. So I don't know if I feel like it's just natural that there will be, not even necessarily because of a bad form, just because of the law of averages. There'll come a game where we don't get the result we want despite playing well. So it could well be that Atalanta game. But I go back to what I said before. I think this team is capable of. I mean, really, this team is favourites against anyone who plays in the league at the moment. We are the most informed team. We're playing the best football. So I am confident, despite what I just said, and I think it'll be a great game. I think the word intensity is the one that's flashing at me in red lights. So if Conte picks Eriksen for that, then that's a really interesting test for him. But I agree, maybe that's the one where he picks Vidal for that exact reason. If you match Atalanta for intensity, you've done maybe 60-70% of the work. So it'll be great. It's good that we've got 4 days rest after the Parma game. The fixtures in terms of rest time, they've fallen quite nicely for us. I think it'd be a great game. I think we'll probably win 2-1.
Nice
Fucking
one.
hell, this if anyone wants to, a definition of guarded optimism or even like Pavlovian conditioning, just speak to a bunch of Interisti, it's crazy. Like when you listen to the logical breakdown, like you and Will just did, we'll have space, we're in the most informed team, blah blah blah. Of course we're gonna win this game, but no, let's not tempt the fates. 4 points. It's
It's so true.
It's tough being an
this is no, but it's like, it's not just that, it's just the fact that I just don't, it's not, I agree that is part of it. And also Interbeffa, as I said last week with Fulvio, I have this is scarred me for life. This notion of Inter screwing things up when they absolutely shouldn't be able to. But having said that, I think, I am ready to say, I mean, again, I think that the Milan's game against Udinese and Hellas and Inter's against Parma and Atalanta, I mean, again, 7 points minimum, which could very much happen. It could very much be that it's minimum. It could be even 8 points. It could be 9 points. If it's like that, then it will.
Or Milan could be 2 points ahead of us.
Well, exactly. But you see, that's what I mean. That's why I'm not ready. I think this is where it will be decided, and that's where I am, because the rest of the games, when you get into that spring in March, April, after it's Sassuolo and Torino, after those, those are a little bit trap games, but not the same way as these two are. They're different, and to me, this is where Inter are, where Milan are, given the performance, the brilliant tactical breakdown, how Pioli for once in his career was able to change the narrative. He benched their captain, brought in Tomori. He used Kessie as a deep lying playmaker to free up Tonali, and Selemakers was fantastic. I mean, it worked, and the team responded to that. That's not the usual Pioli high crash. Usually when he does changes, it just looks worse. That did not happen against Roma. Now we have to see if that was a flash in the pan or the real thing. And they go up against the most frustrating team in the Serie A. I mean, Udinese can frustrate you to crawl out of your skin, and they've done that against Inter. They've done that against they do it against all teams. And I think this is a massive test, and that's why I keep saying. And then you have Hellas, who are pretty much the same thing. So I think this is where it's at. I think really this is where you'll see an indication. If it's anything less than 7 points, this thing can go either way. Don't even count Juventus, because don't even count them out. So I think this is where we are with that. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip, piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the positivity, which will be presented by Mr. Positivity himself, Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person all these qualities.
So we've thanked Antonio Conte for many things over the past year, outside of the results and whatever. The squirming in the stands, the hot mics screaming. And now we have to thank Conte for the amazing Instagram. I think, Will, you mentioned it earlier. I'm loving these posts, man. This guy's a character. I really love the fact that he's, clipping matches and really.
But is it him though? You see, that's the thing. I don't know.
Of course, it's not him.
I was gonna say, like this
He's
Antonio
got-
Conte
It's his
at the
social
age
media
of 50,
feed.
otherwise turns into an influencer. Like, I don't know, man.
But I think it does speak to the general mood inside the
Yeah.
intercamp, and I think, look, the moves themselves are Moratti worthy. The football itself, like we've spoken about earlier, is fantastic. But the fact that it's a bit cheeky now, and I think it says a lot about where the team's headspace is at, and I just think. Yeah, no, I like it very much. I like where Conte's at. I like where the team's at. I like where the football's at. I like how fired up everyone is, and in general, I think in and of themselves, the posts are indicative of that. So I'll take them as my Moratti for the week.
I think it is interesting that Conte is often, he does get touchy when people sort of insinuate that he's a counter-attacking or defensive coach. I think this is definitely him he's definitely enjoying highlighting his liquid football, as Alan Partridge would say, in these intermoves. He's really enjoying sort of showing everyone in case they'd forgotten. But actually, what were you saying, defensive coach? Well, look at this, 10 players involved in one move. How'd you like that? So I think even if it's not directly him, it's definitely got his imprint on it in some form, because I think he enjoys.
I think he's got a point there, and I think I absolutely. You see, this counter-attacking narrative is I don't buy it at all. I know Inter are good at counter-attacking, but I don't think they're a counter-attacking side. I think Inter have so many ways to hurt teams. One of the ways this is all Conte. And again, this is why I keep insisting that this guy is a tactical genius. What he did at Juventus with using Bonucci as his quarterback, where he just pinpoints passes. He's done that now from the left-hand side, playing crosses with Bastoni and Kolarov to a certain extent. Then you see what he did with Christian Eriksen in the Benevento and Genoa games, where Christian Eriksen is next to Handanovic and plays a 60-meter pass straight down the middle to a Romelu Lukaku that's charging like a runaway train. These things are. This is Conte. All this has got his imprints all over it to get his players to see the game, and he really does see it in 3D, and it's really interesting the way he sees it. It's fascinating to see how he interprets the game, because no one else does it like him. Honestly, no one does. He's unique in his style, and I remember during the Euros with that absolutely god-awful Italy team, when Xavi and Iniesta said I think it was Xavi who told him that after the game, he was very proud in the post-match comment saying, Xavi told me we play like Barcelona, but much more direct and physical. And I can and I agree with that. That is his philosophy. It is a marching band, like you say, but there's also a lot of thought and finesse, and he plays the game with his brain. And these comparisons to him and Trapattoni, maybe in terms of character and personality, but not tactically. They're completely different. Trapattoni was the classical Italian 1-0 counter-attack close down shop. Conte is not, and I think what he did with Chelsea absolutely proves that. And so he's a complex character. He's not an easy. There's many shades of grey with Antonio Conte, and sometimes those things can frustrate you or frustrate me to the point where I want to take I want to rip my head off because he drives me crazy. But then you see these brilliant things, and you're like, this guy is wow. The way he looks at the game, no one else plays the game like he does. So when it works, it's again, like you said, it's a marching band. When it works, and when the instruments are all in tune, and no one's hung over in the band, it sounds brilliant. But you gotta get everyone in line to do that, and that's easier said than done. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
Clamoroso autogol di Ranocchia.
Yes, this week's frog is Chelsea. Now, I saw this article before their match against Manchester United in the British tabloids, which rather piqued my interest. I think it's a news reporter's dream, because you can have so many, you can riff off with so many puns with this kind of story. But the story is essentially, and I haven't played football professionally. I haven't even played football in an amateur level for a very long time. So I think the idea behind this is it might well be quite common, but the specifics of this are just something that I've not seen before, and it creates some very amusing images in my head. So the reason that Chelsea are the frog is because apparently for the last year or so, their players have been using a microwave to warm their boots up before matches. And this apparently is to make them sort of easier to wear. But players use they'll use devices to heat their boots up. I can get that. I can see the logic behind that. But a microwave, I think, is quite something else to be taking into the dressing room. Apparently, my initial thought when I saw this was this is some kind of newfangled modern football method that Thomas Tuchel had brought in. But apparently, this has been there for a year in the dressing room, and they take it to away games. So they've become very fond of it.
Bring a microwave with them. Do not tell me they do that.
According to this, they do. A club insider said, once the players have warmed their boots, other staff can use it to heat jacket potatoes too. It's very popular.
Get out.
I think it was a joke, but I mentioned.
Did you read this on The Onion? Like what?
No, this is on The Sun.
Same thing.
I mentioned. Well, yeah. I mentioned Alan Partridge. I mean, using a microwave to heat your boots is very Alan Partridge as well, if you're familiar with his work. But no, so basically they use this microwave to make sure they don't get cold feet in the battle for the top four.
That is insane.
It's unplugged and taken on the team bus to a domestic away game, so they don't take it into Europe. Let's not be silly. And is an integral part of pre-match preparations. It's used to soften the players' boots and to make them more supple and comfortable to wear. And it's to tackle stiffness in the boots. You put it in for a minute or two. If you're an amateur footballer and you want some tips, apparently you put it in for a minute or two. It doesn't give any advice on the heat.
Yeah, I was going to
check the label on your boots when you buy them for microwave
and make sure there's no metal in it, otherwise it will explode.
Yeah. Do they put the studs in there? That's a very good question.
That's the thing. Well, that's what I'm thinking. They all have like plastic studs. This is the craziest shit I've heard in a very long time.
Yeah,
that is wow.
But look, they're unbeaten since Tuchel came in. So clearly, at the moment, the microwave is their lucky charm.
Microwave.
If this were Italy, the microwave would have some kind of superstitious power. And it would have numbers tacked on it and such like.
My favorite part of that is that, of course, they don't bring it to Europe because that would be silly.
Well, of course, Yeah.
You don't travel with a microwave.
Well, imagine trying to sort of
international
through customs. It'd be a nightmare, especially with Brexit. They're not going to allow you additional luggage like that, are you?
That's brilliant.
Here we go. I've just found the phrase "the beautiful game" at the bottom of this article. I told you this was a journalist's dream. Anyway, Chelsea.
Jesus.
Microwaves. Don't try this at home.
No, don't. And then put your jacket potatoes afterwards. Like no, nothing like old foot sweat to add to potatoes.
If there's one thing I've always learned, it's heat your jacket potato before your boots.
Yes, exactly. Right, let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. Mike Piolucci.
I want to preface this by saying that I think on balance, Milan deserved all 3 points yesterday against Roma. They just were the better team, top to bottom. But man, Marco Guida was terrible at his job. Just not good for business, man. 2 very debatable missed penalties. The one, Roma absolutely should have had one. And then the gall to then yellow card Mkhitaryan for being upset and not getting a penalty was just outrageous. Federico Fazio maybe kind of probably should have been red carded. I still don't know. But Federico Fazio is so clumsy that you probably could just give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he should have. But it was just a disaster. Again, like the end result was probably what it should have been. I don't think there's really much of an argument for a draw in that. But it was the way that they got there. It was just embarrassing.
I couldn't agree with you more. This is why Marco Guida is not a good referee. It's his ability to ruin games with his ridiculously inconsistent calls. If you're going to give the penalty to Calabria, then you have to give the penalty on Mkhitaryan, where Theo Hernandez is holding his leg. Like, this isn't. He has his arm around Mkhitaryan's leg. Like, if that's not impeding play, I don't know what is.
It looked like a professional wrestler going for like a submission hold or something.
It really did. And then you have the missed penalty on Rafael Leao, and then you also have with the Veretout thing previous to that. I mean, and then Fazio should absolutely have been sent off for ironically applauding the referee, as Koulibaly has been, as Wesley Sneijder has famously been. That
is the thing. If you're going to have that call, you've got to enforce that call. So yeah, I mean, it was just a disaster, and like it really is disappointing because there were some stretches of really exciting play in there when it wasn't getting marred by Marco Guida, and obviously there were a lot of stakes. But I think anybody who watched that match came away just Marco Guida was the main takeaway, and when you're talking about the ref more than anything on the pitch, then something's gone horribly wrong.
Couldn't agree more. That's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Andrew Pickering. I'd like to thank you, Mo.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It was a great episode and always fun to be here.
Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you. Suning, they considered selling Yangzhou FC for 1 cent before they ceased business this week. So if you want to find out if they're going to try the same with Inter, then stick to SempreInter.com. Spoiler, they're not going to do that. But please keep up to date. It's every day is an adventure at the moment.
It sure is. And if they're letting it go for 1 cent, I might make a bid myself. Reverend Mike, always a pleasure.
Thanks to me boys. Forza Inter.
Absolutely. Until next week, I'm your host, Nima Tavale-Rutsari, wishing you a good week. Stay safe, stay healthy, listen to your authorities, and wishing you 6 points and sempre e solo forza Inter.